G'day people and welcome to another episode of Fantasy Chats with Heff and Checkers. Checkers is on the line here. He's lost his voice a little bit. I think Gather Round has got the better of him. What's the go there, Checkers?
Exactly that. I'm only getting it back today, so if I'm a little bit croaky, I apologise. I'll try my best. I had footy training last night. I had to coach the footy training. I kept yelling out for drills. My voice was breaking like a teenager, so everyone was giggling. Hopefully it doesn't break too much in the potty. But yeah, long weekend in Adelaide on the hill, and that's probably not the best for the old vocal cords.
It's a magical weekend, the old Gather Round. Describe it for anyone who hasn't been able to make it across before.
It's like a big 4-day music festival, but instead of music, it's just footy. It's like the biggest footy party you can ever go to. So I'd say that's what it is. As I like to say, like everyone was always, we've got a few interviews, TV interviews, radio interviews and stuff, and everyone's like, oh, what are you excited for? I was like, let's get this party started. That's where my voice went, probably. But yeah, it's a party. It's not really like a round of footy. It's so weird because everyone's just living the atmosphere.
Yeah, 100%. It is like a music festival. It's the best way to describe it. But instead of like the headline act being like Radiohead or whatever like the kids listen to, you've got bloody Melbourne versus Essendon on a Saturday night. But
yeah, I don't know if that was really quite the headline act.
Yeah.
The Port Hawthorn game was a pretty good headline act if you're a Port fan. That was entertaining, watching the crowd and just watching what was going down. But yeah, I'm trying to think what was probably the best game of the round. It was a hard one. There's a few blowouts and a few.
Yeah. The narrative of the Port game was quite good. Just like kind of the build up to it and everyone expecting Port to get thrashed, and then it being completely the other way. But yeah, I went to the North Gold Coast game in the Barossa. That was good up until about 3/4 time. The Crows game on the Thursday was probably the best, I reckon. Only 16 points in that one, and that could have been anyone's game if things went certain ways. So, yeah, amazing weekend. Amazing weekend fantasy-wise for you, Checkers. What happened?
It started horribly. I put the VC on Tom De Koning. I put the captain on Tom De Koning. I'm trying to think about VC, but I absolutely butchered it. But yeah, my VC was probably like a 70, and then Tom De Koning is the captain for a 75. So I was down in the dumps thinking my week's over, and standing on the hill, just not even bothering to check the AFL app because I was like, that's just a stinker of a week. But bounced back late with Connor Rosie, Jordan Sweet, all the Port boys on the Sunday, and landed overall rank of 360. So I just keep nudging away in the 300s the last few weeks. I think I've been 340, 370, 360. Seems to just be the spot.
Yeah, it's a tricky one when they're at that range because I think a lot of you guys play it safe up the top as well, and do very similar moves and trades and stuff like that. So it's hard to move around. It's probably too early to do anything ballsy and either make or break your season just yet. But that's the way you just got to play it for the next few rounds at least. Anyway, I scored 2042 for the weekend, which doesn't sound fantastic, but it still moved me up, 3,000 ranks. So I'm getting close to being back inside the top 10,000. Sorry. The big one is the Supercoach move, 2,226. That put me up 10k spots for the week. So still ranked outside the top 10 there, 16,000, but that's inside the top 7% of players or something like that. So starting to make moves there. And looking at Jordy DeSena, a good friend of the show, looking at his team, he's the Supercoach guru. He finished 11th a couple of years ago, and he's always around the mark. I've used 2 less trades than him at this time of year, so I'm pretty happy with where my teams are actually sitting at the moment in Supercoach. So I don't know, maybe I just quit and focus on that, Checkers. What do you think?
We'll do the opposites because I'm thinking of quitting my Supercoach team. I'm ranked 27,000 and I just copped a few injuries on the weekend. I'm still carrying a few blokes that are injured as well. About to use up all my trade boosts, I reckon, to fix up all these issues. So I tried to pick 2 similar teams, but also 2 different teams. I picked a few different point of difference players in each comp. In fantasy, I'm flying because I grabbed Libber and I grabbed Geordie Sweet and all the ones that are going right. And then in Supercoach, I skipped on De Koning and I skipped on Libber, and I don't have all these guys that are flying at the moment. So that's probably why my team's ranked 27,000. It's going to be a tough slog.
And those guys are probably doing even better in Supercoach than they are in fantasy.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's probably the big issue there. But anyways, we'll get stuck into the show, I guess. So first segment, we got Pod of the Week. Who's your pod or pods of the week?
Well, I just bring up, we mentioned Jasper Fletcher last week. You brought him up and he backed it up with a ton. So that was pretty nice little grab for anyone who jumped on that, especially in a draft league. I think he's got 98 and 101 the last 2 weeks.
And got defender status.
And got defender status. And just saying, Kitty Coleman's probably 2 weeks away. So you probably get another 2 more weeks of that. Apologies in the background. I think Shrey's just bringing home his groceries.
It's okay.
The pod that I want to roll with is Zach Butters, though. And you might have seen Connor Rosie roll to centre-half back on the weekend. Zach Butters just seems to be the king of the midfield straight away. Come back from injury, flying. There was concerns that he was come back too early, but he hasn't shown it. I think he put up a 95 and then 105. And I think with his run he's got coming up, you got Sydney this week, which might be a little bit difficult if a tag comes his way. But then you got North Melbourne, Western Bulldogs and Crows. So you can probably sit one more week, considering he hasn't pumped out a massive score yet. His price isn't going to fluctuate too much. But then, definitely keep him on the radar when he's got North Dogs and Crows coming up. 1.8% ownership. Come back wanting to prove a statement. It's a contract year, or he's got all the trade rumours sniffing around. So I think, Zach Butters is one I'm going to be targeting, especially with the low ownership, sort of slide under the radar as a primo. So that's mine.
Yeah, I like it. My only concern is, like, Rosie's been the number one tag target. Is he as much of a concern? I think he stays at centre, stays on the halfback flank for the short term anyway, because it was so effective. Plus, didn't really take away from the midfield. Plus, this is a little bit different with Horn Francis spending more time in the middle and not going as forward as much. You kind of don't need him in there. You can just get Will and Drew to kind of roll in there, play that defensive role, or just block for the other two. And those guys are clearance beasts. So I do like the pick. He's always been a good fantasy scorer. He's been a 105 average kind of guy for the last few years. I just worry that now with Rosie on the halfback flank, maybe they don't tag him as much and they go to Butters a lot more. But I guess the smart thing would be to do is wait out this week, see how it looks against Sydney with James Jordan. If he doesn't put up a stinker against Sydney, he's not going to put up a stinker against anyone really. So it's probably a good thing to have a look at. The pods for me, I've picked 3 guys that are under 10% owned. Well, actually 4 guys, but just these are the guys I'm thinking about. So I'm obviously want to do a big midfield move. I think my midfield line is probably the weakest at the moment. I've got Moraes on the field there, so that was probably due to Lawler being out. I probably would have fielded him over that, but Lawler comes back in, whatever. I need to get a rookie out of my midfield essentially, and there's 3 guys I'm looking at, and they're all under 10% owned. This year's kind of I've gone pretty well this year. I guess the ranking's not great, but going against the grain has kind of provided me with some point upside on the cheaper side of things as well. Like not having Dawson this week and then going Sarong over him netted me 10 points and just things like that. That kind of having Libba as well. Like over the first few rounds, he hasn't really had those low games as well compared to Dawson as well. So just going against the grain with a popular move has kind of gone okay. It's probably just my structure isn't great. Which has let me down. So trying to look for guys that are under 10% owned. 3 guys I got on my list, Josh Dunkley, Tom Green, and Sam Walsh. So I'm trying to pick through those guys to be my pod of the week and who I'm going to bring in. And I'm kind of leaning towards Josh Dunkley, I reckon, out of those 3. It's just that he's the more expensive one of the 3. But probably can get up to any of them. What would you pick out of those 3 checkers if you had to choose between Dunkley, Green, and Walsh?
Okay, well, Dunkley is the most expensive one. That's going to be the hardest bit, but probably proven history. Hasn't got an extensive injury history trying to think. Hasn't got the extensive injury history, of Walsh. Walsh has got the back concerns, and he's had a few other niggles and stuff. And I mean, Tom Green's coming just off an injury the preseason as well. He doesn't really have anyone who's going to take his role. So I worry sometimes with Walsh, they do tend to put him on the wing or maybe at half forward or half back. We've seen it rotations a little bit there with Cripper and Hewitt, and everyone else has to come through the middle. And with Tom Green, I mean, he's a fairly one-dimensional mid, but he also does go up forward a bit, and he's pretty prone to a tag because he seems to be quite damaging on the scoreboard when he gets busy. A lot of inside 50 sort of work. So I reckon Dunkley is probably the pick. It's just consistency over the last 5 to 6 years. Whereas the other 2 are probably guys where we know their potential is probably 5 to 10 points better than Dunkley, but it's just the risk factor of is the potential going to pay off? We know Sam Walsh's best game is probably 10 to 15 points better than anyone's, but we don't see it very often lately.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he's starting to hit some form, but I just know that hamstring or back or something is going to flare up at some stage, and he's going to be a forced trade. When
you can take Dunkley risk-free and sort of like have that no concern in the back of your head, which you don't really want to have with your primos. You don't want to have to be worrying every week if an injury is going to flare up or if they're going to cop the tag or if they're not going to be able to shake the tag. I think Dunkley's never really been one to go through those form slumps. Only when they changed his role at Bulldogs very briefly did we see that, but that's not going to happen at Brisbane.
Well, he kind of is the tagger for Brisbane, I guess. Not really a tagger, but plays that more accountable. He's the guy who tackles, forces stoppages, all that sort of stuff. Like, it makes no sense to tag him. Gets a lot of his scores through tackles. But yeah, he is the most expensive out of the three. But I just like that he's unique. Probably most of the competition is going to jump on Nick Dacos this week. But we've seen him be susceptible to tags, even though James Jordan did nothing against him on the weekend. So just trying to look at something a bit more unique. I've got a few other ones here, I guess. Like Lockie Ash is still under 10% owned. And I was almost going to pull the pin and bring him back in. But then I looked at his run over the next few weeks, and I should have written it down here. But I think he's got over the next 5, he's got an easy one coming up, I think. And then he's got 3 games against a team that's conceding less to medium defenders. So that's the running defenders, how Champion Data classifies them. I've got all those numbers up on the Keeper League Pod website if you want to go check him out. But yeah, it's 3 of the toughest games for halfback flankers essentially coming up in the next 5. So he's someone I'm probably steering away from because there's been a few questions about him on other podcasts I've done this week. The other one is, I think you're a big fan of this guy, Big Sammy Draper. Just got the forward status. He's now the number 1 ruck with Nick Bryan going down. I guess that depends if Goldstein does come in, but could you pull the pin on someone like Sam Draper in your forward line?
I love watching him play, but I don't think I could pull the pin. I just think even if he pulls off 1 week as the sole ruck this week, there's going to be a week in the next 4 to 5 where they're going to have to bring in a backup ruck or another tall to chop out in the ruck because, I don't know, he's so damaging in game, like actual gameplay. We're not talking fantasy now. Like, he's so like raw and hard to match up on sometimes, just athletic and tall. And they sort of have to, expose the forward, put him up forward and expose defenders sometimes. So I don't think they want to roll him as a sole ruck at Essendon. I think it's been working quite well for them, having Sammy Draper sort of be very versatile. I don't know if his scoring gets any better going in the ruck either. I don't know if going in the middle is going to help him too much better.
It's a 1-game sample size, but he had the biggest uptick in CBAs this week and scored 101 points. He's averaging 80-odd for the season, so he's not going too bad. Do you think Goldstein comes in for the Bombers then?
Yeah, I've seen it rumoured around. There was another guy that they were talking about, another rookie as well, but I think Goldie would be the obvious choice. Yeah. They was out at training and that someone got a snap of him getting talked to or something like that. And I don't know, it's the most trivial thing that they bring up on forums, but sure, maybe someone was just asking him what he had for breakfast. But I would assume that Goldie comes in the next 2 to 3. Somewhere if it's not this week, it might be next or the week after. Just because, I think the way Draper's been playing and exposing sort of like his athleticism as a tall has been pretty cool for Essendon.
Yeah. I don't mind that take either. And it just kind of all depends on who comes in. What happens there. Plus, I think we've all got bigger issues than trying to go someone in our forward line up to Draper as well. It just seems to be a bit of a throwaway trade. All right, any more pods for you?
Just had the one more, another bomber, Nick Martin. Would have been very massively owned the last few years, but he's just in 4% of teams at the moment. Probably started the year too expensive for us to sort of justify grabbing. Dropped, I think it's 120k now. Had a few stinker scores early on, but had 28 disposals last week, 11 uncontested marks across the halfback flank. There's been worries about his forward role. There's been worries about him getting tagged. Still isn't taking kick-ins, which is a little bit worrying. Ridley, McGrath, Mason Redmond sort of taking the kick-ins, maybe even Roberts.
He's not really playing in defence. That's the thing.
No,
he just got
but on the wing, he was getting down
too.
back a bit more and getting those uncontested grabs, which we haven't seen the first few weeks. He was lacking those. The premium Nick Martin, when he's going flying all colours, all guns blazing, is a lot of uncontested marks, a lot of chip kick play. And the start of the year, he wasn't quite playing that chip kick play. So to see him get 11 uncontested marks is some promising signs. It was against Melbourne. I know that they don't really match up and give away a lot of points, but 982k, defender forward status, 4% owned, just one to watch. We know his scoring history. He can put up 130s, 140s when he's flying. So just one I've got on my radar.
Yeah, I like that one. I think a lot of people. I did another fantasy podcast last night, AFL Fantasy Fanatics with Bales, and they're all big on him. So I think that ownership number is going to increase big time. Having the forward defender status is super handy. It's just for me. Like, I don't know if everyone else is in the same boat, but midfield's my weakest line. I'm playing 2 or 3 rookies on it, and that's the kind of line I want to take care of first before I worry about my forward line too much. Because my defenders, my rucks, and my forwards, I got no rookies on field there. So that's kind of my thought process at the moment. And it's always try to improve your worst player and then move on to next week. All right, you got a hot take for me, Checkers?
Hot take. I'll go with the easy one first, but Bontempelli goes 120 first game back this week against St Kilda. They haven't named him. There hasn't been a lot of news, but I'm going to say he's named 120 against the Saints. Might be sorry scenes for our boy Libber. Might have to start looking at a trade option there. But Bond will be, I'm confident Bond will be back this week, and he's the sort of guy who will be sitting on the sidelines very hungry to get out there. He's not the sort of, most guys in their late 20s in the footy world might just be cashing checks, but I think Bond, he's a hungry operator. So 120, I'm going to bank on it.
Yeah, I think that's a good shout. I think he comes back all guns blazing. Do agree with the Libber assessment too. The one I kind of like as a flow-on effect is, I'm hoping I'm going to watch very closely on Friday. Is it Friday this week they play? I can't remember. No, maybe it's on the weekend. The one I'm going to be watching very closely is Joel Frazier. Been forced to play in the midfield as a result of all their midfielders being injured. But the last 5 games of last season, we saw him play as a halfback flanker and average, I think, around the 80 mark. For those last, I think it was about 4 games actually. Last 4 games, average around the 80 mark. And preseason, that's where he saw him put up big tons in the preseason, playing across that half-back line. And then, as soon as round 1 comes around, he's moved into the midfield kind of because of all the injuries. So if he can go back to that half-back line and play that unaccountable half-back kind of role, where Bailey Dale's been struggling a bit this season with a bit of attention, he could kind of actually be the beneficiary there. So I've already traded him out, so it doesn't really matter. But I think there's a few people still rolling with him in their back line, and it probably made sense to get rid of Sam De Koning first if you had that, because Frazier might see a bump as a result of that. But again, just something we've got to watch closely. Do you want to hear my hot take?
I'm ready. Roll it out.
I think that the Crows mids are going to come back to the pack over the next few weeks. And this is Jordan Dawson's been a big captain option for everyone at the moment. We've got Isaac Rankin as a forward, but obviously playing as a midfielder. I've been looking at champion data, player classifications, and also scores against certain oppositions this week for the Keeper League pod. And I've looked at their run coming up, and they play the Giants this week. And they're the second hardest midfield to score against in the competition at the moment. They've got the Fremantle Dockers after that, which are the third hardest team to score against. Then they've got Carlton, who are the 8th hardest. Then they've got Port Adelaide, who are the 3rd hardest, I think it is, or 4th hardest. And then they got Collingwood, who are an easy one to score against at the moment after that. So the next 4 games are going to be very hard for the Crows to score. If scoring history this season, I know it's a 5-game sample size, but if scoring history is anything to go by. So I've just got the feeling that people who don't own Dawson, or perhaps don't own Rankin as well, might be a bit different because he's in your forward line, might be in line for a bit of a bump or a bit of a leg up on the rest of the pack if the scoring history so far this season is anything to go by. What are your thoughts?
Well, even Rankin's very highly owned now. You get a lot of trade-ins over the last few weeks. Saligo is in 7.5% of teams. So that, he would have started the year at under 1%, I would have assumed. So there's a lot of people who have traded in Crows players in the first few weeks. I agree. I think it was an early season hype, and I was sitting back. I did bring it up a few times with some of my mates, and they laughed it off and said I was an idiot. But they had a pretty early... Their early fixture was pretty easy in the scheme of things. They didn't have any hard opponents in the first 4 weeks, and they, of course, are going to look amazing when you play bottom 4 sides or bottom 8 sides in the first 4 weeks. So the fixture gets a little bit harder. It's a true test. Rankin's got that calf injury, which is also a concern now. He might have to go up forward. Rochelli's got his rib injury, so a few shuffle with the Magnets. If they lose a few games, I think the scoring will definitely drop. There's no way. When you win, you score better. When you lose, you score worse. It's just common sense, isn't it? If you win all your games, usually 5 to 10 points better than the teams that are losing. So If they're not going to be winning every single game by 60 points like they did against the Saints or whatever, then it's going to be obvious that their points will drop off a little bit.
Bit harsh calling the Gold Coast Suns a bottom 4 team, mate. They're in fine form.
Well, they lost to them, so that's when the form turned around. But everyone was thinking Crow's going to go 12 and zip at one point.
Yeah. Yes. I was. A few people asking me earlier on, like, where do you honestly see the Crows finishing? And I was like, somewhere between 6th and 8th. Like 6th, 7th, 8th is where I see they're at, and I feel like that's coming true to form now. Probably not as good as the top kind of liners, but somewhere firmly in that middle pack, and probably one of the upper side of that middle pack. Anyways, what are we doing
on the opposite end? I know you're a Port Adelaide fan, but I think Port Adelaide would be the opposite end of the scale. They had a pretty average start of the year. Rosie's put up a few average scores. Horn Francis put up a few average scores, but then in their next few games, obviously Sydney this week was the one they got to get through, but then you got North, Dogs, Crows, some easier teams to score against fantasy-wise, so it'd be interesting to watch the Fox Footy predictors, all the experts flip their predictions on where people are actually at. Yeah, after definitely. The first 3 rounds, they're telling us Gold Coast and Crows are going to win the flag, and I think after round 8, they'll be telling us Port Adelaide a top 4 chance. So,
well, the thing I saw on Sunday night was, like, over the first 4 rounds, I personally saw a pretty obvious change in Port Adelaide's game plan, where they're leaving their forward line more open. They're trying to leave space to overlap run into. And what we saw over the first few weeks, especially against Essendon, was just the overuse of the handball, trying to create that overlap. Like when they should have got it on the boot, that handball into trouble, get tackled, turn it over, all that sort of stuff. Against Hawthorn, it felt like they'd almost figured it out. They almost got it kind of perfected. And, even look at... and use Hawthorn as an example. I'm not saying we're going to go on a run like that or anything but it took them a few weeks to kind of click last season, trying to play a different kind of frenetic style. And once it clicked hard, and it kind of went on. So Port have the ability to do that. It's just more about whether their players can remain focused and switched on. I think that's probably the biggest issue. But the fantasy flow on of that should be good, I think, if they can start to get things clicking and get things going. So, anyways, what are your trade plans for the week? What are you thinking?
I'm going to double downgrade again. People will be laughing, but I'm at rank 360. I don't need to get too silly. If I drop a few ranks, I just want to have some coin in the bank because there's a lot of key personnel coming back. You got Bont coming back, Tom Green hitting form. Dacos, I'm still going to give another week on him. I'm just going to pray that he dishes up a 70 and it might be a good laugh for me and give me a little boost in rankings. But you're looking at guys like Kako, Murphy Reid, some of these guys who are averaging in the 40 to 50 zone, and just probably time to just make some quick cash. Currently in my trade things, I have Murphy Reid to Caden Cleary and Sam Davison to Sard El Hawley. So, but looking at Kako, looking at Reid, looking at Davidson, Joe Berry I got rid of last week, but just time to make that first sort of like cull of your pre-season rookies, unless they're Levi Ashcroft and dishing up big scores. I think, it's probably time to, they're not much more coin to be made there. So I'm going to go the double downgrade.
Yeah, I don't mind the option, especially if you're sitting where you are. I'm kind of on the other end. I've got 450K in the bank, I think it is. So I think I need to do something about Sam DeConing, just kind of move him down, because like people are playing Zach Reid at D6.
I'm playing Zach Reid at D6.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like everyone's doing that. So I don't lose anything by moving him onto the field because I got him on the bench, really. So might as well move him onto the field. Pocket, go someone like Sam DeConing down to Cleary or something like that, and then just have like infinite cash to spend on whoever I want at the other end, and then have some left over for the following week as well. So my thoughts are just go DeConing down to Cleary via DPP, because I think I can put Stone back there, go to Cleary up forward, and then I could do anything in my midfield. I could potentially go someone like Moraes, although he's probably got more coin to make. Maybe someone like Sam Davidson who's getting close to maxing out, and go him up to maybe my Dunkley or one of those other 3 I was talking about before, or even Nick Dacos if I have a closer look at it and I like his run, and even Merritt as well. Merritt's a great pick with his run coming up as well. I can kind of move to him, and I don't think you're going to get him any cheaper as well.
Parrish just did another little niggle in his calf, so you're in the clear there in that midfield. So.
Yeah. Plus also the midfield run for Essendon is dynamite for the next few weeks as well, so I don't see anyone kind of chasing him. So at this stage, maybe I even think of someone like Merritt, even though I think he's going to be a very popular trade in, and it kind of goes against my pod ways. I think that's the smart option at the moment. So, yeah. All right. I reckon that will do us for this week. Anything you want to plug coming up or anything, Checkers?
Not really. Just hoping I get my voice back this week. We don't have footy this weekend, so thankfully I don't have to yell at anyone at the footy field or do anything like that, or scream, kick it to me. I can rest up a little bit, so it should be good for next week.
Take some time off, rest up. I put out a new game yesterday. We've been playing it on the socials over the past.
That is true. I've been playing it all night in bed. Bloody kept me up till 4 a.m. playing expert mode.
Sorry, mate. How'd you go? What's your best streak so far?
On expert, 5. Struggling.
5. That's pretty good. I reckon I can only get about 5 on hard mode. So, you're going pretty good there. I always find that you have the most random ways of knowing like players because like you've got a lived experience through them, whether you've met them at the pub or you were randomly at their first game and they made a big deal about it or whatever. You've got a good lived experience in the way that you identify players. So I like seeing you play those games and see how you go. Anyways, I think that'll do for this week. We'll catch you next week. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.